With another video. Today we're talking Horror Mt Rushmore Revisited. Why revisit, you ask? Well, because I already did a video on this topic about 6 months to a year ago, but today we're switching up, doing something different. We're doing 3 tiers of Horror Mt Rushmore. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. That means there's room for 12 iconic horror villains to make this overall list. Of course, in the comments, let me know, what is your Horror Mt Rushmore? Do you agree with mine? You can rank your tiers, list your tiers if you want. And of course, if you like the video, hit the thumbs up, hit the like, leave a comment, and most importantly, please subscribe. All right, let's get to it. We're going to do tier 1, our top 4. Now, I should preface, this is actually only modern times, of course. If we go back in the day historically, you got to think about people like Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein. So we're doing more modern times, so all respect to the OGs. Our top 4. Number 1 on Horror Mt Rushmore. Who do you have to have? Who can you not leave off Horror Mt Rushmore? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say our boy, our favorite, Mr. Personification of Evil himself, the one with the darkest eyes, the blackest eyes, the guy that Loomis tried to help for 7 years, spent another 7 years trying to keep him locked away. None other than Mr. Michael Myers from Halloween. He sits on top of Horror Mt Rushmore in place number 1. Listen, it's not that this list is in a particular order, but I would say that Michael Myers comes to mind as number 1 to me because, of course, you got to think, the man definitively had a great movie in the 70s. He then had a strong presence in the 80s, a presence in the 90s. In the 2000s, he dominated with Halloween Okay, all right, so Mikey kind of wasn't as strong in the 2000s, but then you could say, Rob Zombie's Halloween was a big hit as well. So you could say he did have a hit movie in the 2000s. And then just when you think old Mikey's too old to make an impact, 2018's Halloween becomes the biggest box office slasher of all time. That moved Michael into number 1 on the all-time horror icons, modern era, of course, Horror Mt Rushmore. But who comes in number 2? Who's number 2 on the list? Well, often confused for Michael, but a completely different slasher with a different franchise. Known for being in rights hell, always court battles over their rights, keeping us from getting the 13th movie. But I'm, of course, talking about Jason Voorhees, old sweet revenge Jason, whatever the hell that is. Never hike alone when Jason's around. I hope we get a 13th movie. But listen, what can you say about Jason? Jason came around in the 1980s with Friday the 13th Part 2. First wearing a sack over his head. Who would have thought, looking at Sackhead Jason, that would have spawned such an iconic franchise? Who would have thought Sackhead Jason would have led to a hockey mask? The hockey mask would have led to more hockey masks, sometimes worse looking hockey masks. Uber Jason, a battle with Freddy Krueger, a reboot, going to space. Everything that Jason Voorhees has commanded since the 80s. Everything Jason's produced with an iconic franchise, a franchise that many feel like is their favorite horror franchise. No question about it, Jason's number 2 on Horror Mt Rushmore. Number 3, well, it's been a long time since we've seen old Pizza Face in theaters. Fred Krueger, who originally made his appearance in 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street, went on to spawn many sequels, a TV show, a 1-800 hotline, that's right, you could call Freddy, and also appearances in different music videos. I love the Will Smith Nightmare on My Street song, by the way. If you can look that up on YouTube, that's actually a great song just in general. Listen, Freddy Krueger to me was the king of the 80s when it comes to horror. From 1984 to 1991, Freddy was all over the place, hosting MTV shows, hosting his own Tales from the Crypt style TV show. His movies were making crazy money at the box office. The world could not get enough of Freddy. Look at 1991's Freddy's Dead. Slashers were no longer even, they weren't even popular anymore. You think about 1989 was the downfall when you had Halloween 5 bomb at the theaters. You had Nightmare 5 bomb at the theaters. You had Jason Takes Manhattan bomb at the theaters. 1990, really nothing going on there slasher-wise either. 1991, the world has moved on past the 80s slasher craze, and here comes Freddy Dead. Still makes $36 million at the box office, still a box office hit, all in the back of Freddy being such an iconic, strong villain. The only thing holding Freddy back from really challenging for number 1 or number 2 is just in modern fans' mind, we haven't got enough of Freddy. We haven't gotten the iconic movie in the theaters. We haven't gotten iconic short films. I mean, there's been some short films that are good, but I don't think any are particularly as good as Never Hike Alone in terms of keeping the presence of Freddy in fans' minds. So Freddy just needs a rebirth in order to capture the minds, capture the imaginations of today's younger generation. All of us that are over 30, I think we have a healthy love, respect, iconic worship of the Freddy Krueger. Well, this sounds weird to say it's about Freddy, who's a damn child killer, murderer, kills people in their dreams. Just saying the Nightmare franchise. We all have a healthy love for the franchise in general. And it just hasn't really been prominent in the consciousness of society for a long time. And, you know, a big difference between Nightmare and Friday the 13th is that people love the Friday the 13th 2009 movie and people hate the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake. People hate that movie. They wish it didn't exist. And that's kind of made it so that Freddy really hasn't had a proper appearance in movie theaters, in our living rooms, since 2003's Freddy vs. Jason. The one thing about holding this whole thing back is that unlike Michael, unlike Jason, there's a serious concern that you really can't continue the Nightmare franchise without Robert Englund. It's not a masked person that you can just take any stuntman and put the mask on. Freddy Krueger is prominent for Robert Englund's facial expressions, mannerisms, his voice. It's going to be very hard to replace. So it's all more impressive that he's on Horror Mt Rushmore just based on his work from the 80s to the early 90s. That's what we're talking about. Everybody else, Michael, Jason, everybody else, they've had new movies. They've stayed prominent. Freddy's just really a lot of goodwill based on that 7-year run. Only 7 years, 1984 to 1991. I guess, okay, let's stretch 10 years. Let's go 1994 because we do want to count Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But most of the goodwill is from that original series back then. So Freddy, to me, maybe peaked the highest in terms of box office, in terms of mainstream appeal. Freddy was numero uno for 7 years, peaked the hottest, but burned out the quickest. All right, who's number 4? This is where things get revisited because in the video I did last year, I battled back and forth between who was number 4 on my Mount Rushmore. And back then, I went with Chucky. I went Chucky the doll. I thought Chucky was the 4th most iconic modern slasher horror icon behind the first 3. And I've revised my opinion. This is revisited. I am nothing but not open-minded to changing my opinions. And I'm going to say that I now put Ghostface ahead of Chucky. That's right. Damn, Roger Jackson, iconic voice. Ghostface, who is different characters, different actors, but once they're wearing the Ghostface mask, they can do any kind of superhuman strength ability. Doesn't matter if it's a teenage high school girl under the mask, supposedly character-wise, or a grown man under the mask. They can all just do a lot of crazy shit when the Ghostface's mask is on. And that was something I held against Ghostface, the idea that Ghostface isn't really a character. I was thinking, hey, it's a different person, a different character each movie, so how can it be so iconic? The mask is iconic. The voice is iconic of Roger Jackson, but Ghostface itself isn't its own separate entity. I struggle with that idea. I've finally come around the idea that Ghostface ignores whatever character is supposedly under the mask. When they're wearing the Ghostface mask, it does become its own separate entity, its own separate strength, mannerisms, kills. So Ghostface being its own thing, specific thing, you got to think about pop culture impact. You got to think about modern slashers. Scream has been the biggest slasher franchise since 1996. So Ghostface has earned a spot on Horror Mt Rushmore. Now, things get more interesting now because now we're going to go to Tier 2. These are the secondary horror villains who are still iconic, still memorable, but just not on the very top tier of the top 4. That's not saying anything bad about them. It's only 4 places on Mount Rushmore. So we're doing a number 2, second horror tier Mount Rushmore here. Okay. This one I struggle with because the first 4 are a little bit more obvious to me. The second 4 takes a little bit more subjective opinion, personal bias into it. Now, the first person on Horror Rushmore Part 2, I mean, if I just took him off Horror Mt Rushmore 1 and replaced him, he still has to be front and center on Horror Mt Rushmore Part 2, and that is Chucky. Chucky, who's been around since 1988, was prominent in the late 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. So, just like Michael Myers, who did 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, just like that, just like Jason, who's been prominent every decade, Chucky's been a mainstay in our households, movie theaters, television shows, living rooms. We've seen Chucky for decades now. You have the iconic voice from Brad Dourif. You have a pretty good film series, pretty consistent. There's one or two of them I'm not super high on, but for the most part, I like most of the movies in the Chucky movie universe. The television show, I've only seen season one. I've heard mixed feelings about the rest of the TV show, but the fact that it got to 3 seasons suggests that it was relatively successful for a modern TV show. Not every show even gets to 3 seasons these days with how quick they cancel every damn TV show. So Chucky at 3 seasons still also inspired a remake in theaters. I think the whole Megan franchise, if we're being honest, probably owes a lot to the legacy of Chucky. So I think Chucky is right here, number one on number two's Horror Mount Rushmore. The second spot on this list is going to go to Leatherface. Leatherface, I think, is probably underrated by me. I know there's some people that put Leatherface on the original OG Horror Mount Rushmore. They would replace Ghostface or even maybe Jason. I don't think Leatherface is as prominent as other people do. I think that Leatherface has had his time. I think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, is a classic. The 2003 remake is solid. There's been other solid movies in, the franchise. There's been some very forgettable movies in the franchise for sure. Who could forget Matthew McConaughey and Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation? That was a hell of a performance. But Leatherface himself, I don't think is as iconic as other horror icons. For me, there's not as many iconic moments. For me, the character doesn't appeal to me as much. I'm not as big on Leatherface as others are, although I respect the legacy, and he definitely deserves place, at the very least, on the second tier Horror Mount Rushmore. Okay, who we're going to next? Well, this is actually very tricky. I'm going to go ahead and say that my number 3 here is going to be Jigsaw. Jigsaw from the Saw franchise. I think we as horror fans maybe underrate how big Jigsaw is, how much people recognize the voice, the bike, the movies. The Saw franchise is pretty big in society's, let's say, culture zeitgeist. I mean, everybody knows Jigsaw. There's enough good movies in the franchise. I mean, you have 8 or 9 movies. You got spinoffs. They're all theatrical releases. The franchise is healthy, keeps going. So I just think that we have to be realistic that Jigsaw is an iconic horror person. So putting him on the list. All right, number 4 to complete basically the second tier Horror Mount Rushmore is going to be Hannibal Lecter. Now this is tricky to me because I know that Hannibal Lecter, is he actually like an iconic horror villain with only a few movies? I think so. I think you got to do it. I mean, he doesn't have a 10-movie franchise, but Anthony Hopkins, anytime he's on screen as Hannibal Lecter, just completely mesmerizes you. One of the best character actor performances of all time has to be, Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. So there's a spot here. And of course, all those movies are pretty fantastic. Red Dragon's kind of okay. Hannibal's okay, but the original Silence of the Lambs is amazing. Good shit. So, all right, now even getting trickier now. We've done Horror Mount Rushmore number 1. We've done the second tier Horror Mount Rushmore. We're now going to do, and I got to check my list that I wrote down here because this is tough. Horror Mount Rushmore tier 3. Oh man, just looking at my list here, this is actually, I'm second guessing my opinions already, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Let's go with number 1 spot on Horror Mount Rushmore part 3. It's going to be Pennywise. Pennywise, who is, of course, the clown from the It franchise, the Stephen King It franchise, first appearing in the Stephen King book, then the 1990 miniseries, and then we had 2 movies in the last 10, 15 years that came out, and now we have a TV show coming out. Tim Curry, to me, is the best version of Pennywise, but they've both been solid, and look, those It movies were huge. I mean, maybe not the 1990 franchise, but the ones that came out recently were huge hit movies, and because that everybody knows Pennywise, a lot of Halloween costumes for Pennywise year round. The TV show I'm sure is going to be a huge hit, so I think Pennywise has earned his stripes, his clown stripes, at least on Horror Mount Rushmore number 3. Okay, now we can never forget classic Tony Todd himself, Mr. Candyman, one of the best horror movies in the 90s, was always freaked out as a kid. You would go to parties with friends and they would actually do this stupid thing and be like, hey, let's go in the bathroom and say Candyman 5 times in the mirror. It's like, no, I don't think I'll be having that. I'm going to go play Mario Kart. You guys go do your stupid thing. If you get killed, then, only blame yourselves because you're not supposed to call Candyman in the mirror like that. So I still probably would not for any amount of money or anything, I would still not go in the bathroom and say Candyman 5 times in the mirror. I'm not doing it. But the movies, well, okay. The original Candyman's a classic. Candyman 2, farewell to the flesh. Well, maybe farewell to the franchise. Decent, but also kind of terrible. And I've been told that Candyman 3 is one of the worst horror sequels of all time. And then we had a remake slash reboot, 2019, 2020, 21, something like that, just a couple years back. And actually, it was pretty solid, pretty good. But the best part also was the very last scene. There's a cameo by Tony Todd. Spoilers ahead. Tony Todd shows up for 10 seconds. It's the best damn 10 seconds in the movie. I think maybe Candyman might be done as a franchise. I don't know if it really would be revisited in the future. It feels like the story's been told. But, I mean, listen, Tony Todd's an icon in horror, and that's his most prominent role, so I gotta go Candyman on that. Okay, so now let's go to number 3 on my number 3 Horror Mt Rushmore tier. And this is someone who can probably move up to tier 2 and tier 1 in the next couple years. I think my friend Nick Arcana probably already has him in tier 1 and tier 2. And a lot of people probably already have him in tier 1, tier 2. For me, I feel sort of middle ground. I'm not the biggest fan of the franchise, but I do like it reasonably well. That's Terrifier. So we're talking about Art the Clown. Art the Clown, who is an iconic killer, dressed as a clown, iconic kills. I mean, you see that Halloween costume booming every year now. Went to a horror convention last year, and the actor who played Art the Clown had the biggest line by far. So his prominence right now, the excitement horror fans have for Art the Clown is crazy. Now, we're still kind of in the middle of his run, though. We're in the thick of it, so it's hard to measure his impact or his legacy when you're so much in the peak of it. So in the years to come, Art the Clown can move to tier 2, maybe even tier 1. We don't know what his overall impact is going to be. But right now, I got him on tier 3. We have one final spot on Horror Mt Rushmore, number 3, or number 4 on tier 3. And this was a hard one, but I'm going to go with Pinhead. I think Pinhead has such an iconic look. The Hellraiser franchise is like 11, 12, 13 films. The OG Pinhead, Doug Bradley. There's been a remake, a reboot. So I think that Hellraiser has to get its props. Now, some may have him at least in tier 2, and maybe I will if I actually watch the entire Hellraiser franchise, but I've only seen the first half of part 1. Don't take away my horror card. I'm working on it. I'm going to marathon the Hellraiser films sometime soon, but for now, I haven't seen all the Hellraiser films, so at most it could be on my tier 3, but I'm in full recognition of how iconic Pinhead is. If there was a 4th tier Horror Mt Rushmore, Warwick Davis, Leprechaun, one of my favorite B-movie horror villains, would be on that list. Who else? Wishmaster. Wishmaster only had 2 movies, essentially. Wishmaster 2. We don't really talk about Wishmaster 3 and 4, but you can make a case that Wishmaster 1 and 2 should have got him at least on Horror Mt Rushmore tier 4. Who else? I don't know. I mean, I have to think about it. Maybe I'll do a horror tier Mount Rushmore 4 and 5, but if you do too many of them, you start to cheapen the idea of the whole thing if you have too many tiers. So I'm going to stick with 3 tiers for now. Let me know in the comments who's on your Horror Mount Rushmore. What are your tiers looking like? Do you have tiers? But who's on your top 4, your main 4 Horror Mount Rushmore? And until next time, you guys take care.